Hello all, welcome to the new Simply Put series by Kalamais Academy. This is Priyanka Mahapatra, faculty at Kalamais. So before starting today's discussion, I want to wish you a very happy new year. So let's start this year with new articles, new hopes, new visions, new discussions, right? So the text and the context section of the Hindu newspaper was having two articles very important from our exam point of view about the RBI governor's role in 1991 crisis. Okay. And another article was important about the virtual asset providers. Similarly, two articles were important from the explain section of the Indian Express newspaper about the ISRO's first mission of this year, XPoSat launch, and about the northeastern states, right? So these are the four articles we would be discussing today that are displayed on your screen. So the first article is about an IS officer. An IS officer who was the governor of RBI during the 1991 BOP crisis. Right? And his name was S. Venkataramanan. He passed away recently. That is why the article appeared in the newspaper. He played a very important role in managing the BOP crisis that time. That we will be studying. Okay, he showed his exemplary leadership qualities in managing the crisis immediately without even relying on the government steps. Okay, so this is a very unique example which comes in newspaper very rarely. You should be noting it down in your ethics and essay notes, which you can use it directly in your exam, and this can be very rewarding whenever you are writing any unique examples. And this example you can quote it whenever any keyword like courage, leadership, dedication, determination appear in your question paper, right? So what was the situation in 1991? You all know that we were facing the balance of payment stress. We were facing the current account balance of payment crisis when we were facing a reduction of receipts and also rise in value of imports. We were facing a double whammy. The inward remittances were slowing down and there was a Gulf crisis going on. Therefore, there was a rise in the price of oil and the current account deficit is swelled up to 3% of the GDP, the highest by far in the 2 decades. The import cover went to historic low of 3 weeks only, and there was a speculation that India would default on its external payment obligations. So in such a crisis scenario, the RBI governor, who was Mr. Venkati Ramanan, he showed his exemplary leadership quality in taking a quick decision in that situation. He did not even wait for the government to tell its decision. Okay, so what he did, he pledged the gold reserves of RBI to the international banks like Bank of England to raise a hard currency loan. For example, it shipped 47 tons of gold to the Bank of England to raise $405 million, which helped the country to repay some of its debt to the international donors and creditors. So it was that courage and leadership he showed that time, for which our condition improved. Another important step which the RBI took was raising the cash margin. The cash margin was hiked fourfold between 1990 and 1991. So why raising cash margin is important in stabilizing the economy? What is cash margin? Okay, that we will be seeing now. So what is cash margin? So cash margin is the percentage of cash payment that we are requiring to pay upfront while making the imports. That means we need now more money to make imports. Because the percentage of cash payment is now been increased, we have to pay more upfront while making the imports of goods. So by increasing the cash margin, the imports will be now expensive because we need more money to pay upfront while making the imports. So therefore the volume will now reduce. Whenever the value is increasing, the people are not encouraged to buy more the imported goods. Therefore the volume will decrease. And when the volume will decrease, the foreign exchange reserves are getting preserved. They are getting conserved. We are conserving the foreign exchange reserves. Okay, so here the gist is that higher cash margin means the importers will need now more money to pay upfront. Therefore, it will reduce the demand of imports, and therefore it will ease the pressure on the foreign exchange reserves, on the foreign currency reserves, and therefore it will bring the economic stabilization, and therefore it will address the BOP crisis. So that is how the raising of cash margin was very, very helpful in stabilizing the economy. So how did we do that? By the import compression. Okay, so now you understand what is import compression. That means we are reducing the value or the volume of imports into a country. And how we are reducing that? By raising the cash margin. Understood? So are you now clear with both the terms, import compression and cash margin, and how raising cash margin is important for the stabilization of economy? So this can become a very, very important question in the prelims this year. Please make note of it. And therefore the condition improved. The current account deficit, it flipped from the high of 3% in 1991 to mere 0.3% of GDP in 1991 to 1992. So therefore the condition improved because of the exemplary leadership qualities shown by the RBI governor in pledging the gold reserves, number one, and number two, by raising the cash margin. So the official history of RBI of the period says that at a critical time and in the thick of BOP crisis, the main task of the RBI bank under the leadership of the governor Sri Venkati Ramanan turned out to navigate the country through the troubled waters. So the history of RBI states this fact, this honor. It has honored Sri Venkati Ramanan, and you should be writing this example in your ethics and essay paper. So this was all about the first article discussion. Then we come to the Financial Intelligence Unit India issues compliance show cause notice to the 9 offshore virtual digital asset service providers. So now the Financial Intelligence Unit India, FIUIND, it has issued some compliance notice to the virtual digital asset service providers because they were not complying to the PMLA Act. Okay, so what do you understand by the virtual digital asset? This term has been defined under Section 2 of the Income Tax Act. Okay, and the virtual digital asset is something or any information or code or number or token which is generated through cryptographic means. And it is not any currency, nor any Indian currency or foreign currency. It has nothing to do with the foreign currency or Indian currency or any national currency, but it is a kind of information code which is generated through the cryptographic means. So now the term, what is virtual digital asset service providers? So it is a kind of service provider. As the name suggests, it is a kind of exchange. It is a kind of service provider that facilitates the exchange. For example, crypto exchange, Bitcoin ATM, custody provider, peer-to-peer exchange. Okay, where it is facilitating the exchange on the behalf of clients. That means it is exchanging between the virtual assets and the national currencies. It is facilitating the exchange between one of more forms of virtual assets, transfer of virtual assets. It is a kind of ATM. What does the ATM do? It facilitates the exchange of currency. That's what this service provider does in case of virtual assets. Right? Are you clear? So this has been defined by the Financial Action Task Force that any business that conducts one or more of the following actions on behalf of its clients, that is the exchange that is happening between the virtual assets only, or the virtual assets or national currencies, or the transfer, or also safekeeping or administration or the virtual assets, or any instrument enabling the control over virtual assets, or participating and provision of financial services related to an issuer's offer or any sale of a virtual asset. So anything which is involved in these actions is called a service provider. So currently, do we have any regulation which is regulating these VDASPs, these virtual digital asset service providers. Yes, we are having a regulation in 2023. We brought them under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, where it is mandated that they should be verifying the identities of the onboarded clients. They should be maintaining records of their financial positions. They should be maintaining records of the potentially suspicious transactions. And if at all they are not doing, then they will be given show cause notices, as it has been done this time to the 9 offshore VDASPs. And if at all they are not getting registered, then also it will be said that they are non-compliant. Okay, so firstly they need to register themselves as reporting entity and comply with the set of obligations as mandated under the PMLA Act 2002. And it is an obligation that applies to all VDASPs irrespective of their presence in India. If at all they are operating in India, that itself is a bigger reason to get registered. Okay, it is not necessary that they have to be physically present in India in order to get registered, in order to get regulated under PMLA 2002. Okay, so currently it is 31 VDASPs that are being registered under FIU IND. So the second article is about the ISRO's launch, XPoSat, that is X-ray polarimeter satellite, and it is the India's first polarimetry mission. Okay, so it is the first mission which has been sent for analyzing the polarization of X-rays that are emanating, that are generated from the bright celestial sources like magnetars, pulsars, in the medium frequency band. Very, very important to remember that we have already satellite from NASA which is doing the same thing for the soft frequency band, but now we have done for the medium frequency band, and it is the world's second satellite based mission after NASA, which is dedicated for the X-ray polarimetry measurements. Okay, so XPoSat, it comprises of two payloads named as Pollux and Expect. So Pollux, it is the world's first instrument designed to operate in the medium X-ray range. Very, very important. It is the world's first instrument. Just I discussed that we are first nation to introduce the X-ray polarimeter in the medium X-ray range. Okay, so this you need to remember from the prelims point of view. The Expect, it is designed to conduct the fast timing and the resolution in the soft X-ray range, which is already been provided by the NASA, and it is the observation from the low Earth orbit. So it will be actually targeting the magnetars and the neutron stars, which emanate a lot of X-rays, and when they are transiting through the Earth's shadow period, for example during the eclipse period, then we would be capturing those X-rays emanating from the magnetars or neutron stars, and then we would be studying. Okay, so it will observe two kinds of sources like persistent sources and the transient sources. Transient sources means they appear in interval of time like pulsars, galactic nuclei, magnetars. Understanding? So this is the physics about the X-rays. Here you need to know about that the X-ray is about the scattering of light, okay, which is important in knowing the structures, in knowing the geometry of the emanating particles, bright celestial objects. For that reason, it is important here that we have sent the X-ray polarimeter. So here it is important to understand that why X-ray polarimeter is very, very important, all the more important for now. What unique we are doing in the case of X-ray polarization measurements, because it has never been attempted ever before. It's the first time by India in the medium energy band. So previously what scientists used to do, they used to rely on three primary sources of data. First is spectroscopic data. So what is that? We are studying the spectrum of light emitted or absorbed by the celestial objects. So by studying the spectrum, by studying the light emitted from the celestial objects, we used to make our measurements, we used to study that data. Second is imaging data. Imaging data, where we used to capture the visual representation of the celestial objects and then make the measurements of the objects. Then we have also devised the time-based data in order to make the measurement of the celestial objects. That means we are studying the variations in the timing of events like periodicity of pulsars or orbits of the binary stars. So by using these three primary sources of data, we use to measure the size, the geometry of the objects. But the limitation is here because of the atmospheric conditions, which is affecting the ground-based observations. Again, certain wavelengths, they are best observed when they are in space in order to avoid any interference from the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, so for that reason, it is important now to have the X-ray polarimeter. Okay, so X-ray polarimeter, it will help in understanding the geometry of the celestial objects which emit the X-rays, understand the physical properties of the sources. This is very, very important. In this way, you can learn the significance of the mission, which is important from your prelims point of view. It is relevant for the objects like pulsars and magnetas whose magnetic fields are very, very strong. It will help also in studying the compact objects like black holes and neutron stars. Okay, it will also help understand the strength and the configuration of the magnetic fields in the vicinity of the X-ray emitting sources. This is particularly relevant for the objects like pulsars and magnetas, where the magnetic fields are very strong. Okay, so for that reason, the X-ray polarization measurements are very, very important. In 2021, we already have a NASA mission which launched the Imaging X-ray Polarimetry Explorer, which operates in the soft X-ray band, which I just discussed. We do not have any mission which is operating in the medium energy band. Okay, so for that reason, our India's mission XPoSat is important. AstroSat, which we have already sent, it was not having any polarization studies, but it will study the broad spectroscopy of the X-ray sources, right? But the direct study we are doing this time by sending XPoSat. So understood, the main crux here is that the XPoSat, it will operate in the medium energy band, and the geometry of the celestial objects and very compact objects can be studied very meticulously because of the nature of the polarimetry. Okay, so if you know the physics, then you will better understand that how polarimetry work. But that is not important from your exam point of view. You just need to know that polarimetry involves scattering. Okay, it will send some rays when it passes through thick atmosphere, thick universe objects. So by measuring those scattering, by measuring those scattering of photons, electrons, we can exactly define the geometry of the celestial objects. So that is how the X-ray polarimetry will help us in understanding the celestial objects, right? So the fourth article is about the Northeast, how it was invented 52 years ago and what was the driving force. Okay, so it is a very, very interesting article. This becomes important from your post-independence syllabus, which is there in your GS paper 1. So on December 30, 1971, two laws, the Northeastern Areas Reorganization Act and Northeastern Council Act, were enacted by the Parliament. And these two acts currently shape the whole 8 Northeastern states. Very, very important. So current status is that we are having 8 states: Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim and Tripura, which are part of Northeastern Council. And here it is important to remember that it is a statutory advisory body that plays a role in the development planning and the regional level policy making, which is actually analogous to the municipality council in the cities and the panchayat raj in the rural areas. Okay, so the Northeastern Council, it is a statutory advisory body that takes care of the development planning in the northeastern states. So in pre-independence, we all know that there was a colonial Assam, and 5 of the 8 present-day states were part of the colonial Assam. Apart from that, Manipur and Tripura, they were princely states, okay, which was under the direct administration of the British political officers who was answerable to the governor of Assam, right? And Sikkim was the most unique of the 8. In 1947, it became an independent country after our country's independence. Then in 1975, we annexed it. And in 2001 only, it was a member of Northeastern Council and hence an official part of the Northeastern state. Okay, so that is how it is very unique. In 2001 only, it was officially a part of the Northeastern state. So the colonial Assam in the pre-independence time, it was a frontier province in the British India. So what do you mean by the frontier province? So frontier province, they are very, very different from the rest of the country. In what way they are different? Because the provinces, they are characterized by the strategic importance, because they are located in the peripheries of the empires, or they are having direct link with the neighboring territories or regions. So therefore, the governance and the administration, they are shaped by the considerations, the security considerations related to defense, border security. Okay, so they are those areas where we need to take care of the specific circumstances, specific needs of the region. So colonial Assam was such a frontier province in the British India. We know the location, that it is very close to the neighboring territory. That is why it was a frontier province. Like the Northwest Frontier Province was also there. Okay, so the political legal setup was very, very different from the rest of the country. So actually we were having settled districts of Assam and the excluded areas of hill areas. Okay, so settled district, see, this is the border. Here it will be settled district, and here there will be a buffer created of the excluded areas near the border, international border. This is the settled areas. Okay, so that is how it was demarcated. So the settled district of Assam was very, very rich in resources. It is the present days Assam and Sylhet, now in Bangladesh. It was under the direct rule of British. And it was the region's economic heartland where tea, coal and oil industries emerged in the 19th century. Then came the excluded areas or the hill areas. They are controlled by various tribes. And the presence of colonial powers there was very minimal because of the tribes there. And it was very sparsely populated. It was kind of a buffer zone between the settled district and the international border. So it was in the between. This area is the excluded areas. For example, we had also the FATA, federally administered tribal area, that was located between the settled districts of Northwest Frontier Province and the international border with Afghanistan in the west. Okay. So that is how was the arrangement of the states, of the districts of Assam. Okay, so at the time of independence, because of these structures, Indian state made a series of ad hoc decisions to institute new governance structure. Why? Because after independence, we felt the need to secure those regions, to have control over those regions, because those are very sensitive areas, those are very much close to the international borders. So the creation of the northeastern states was driven by security reasons only. Very, very important from your post-independence syllabus point of view. So all those governance changes, all those new governance structure which we brought, that were very ad hoc, okay, and that were only brought hurriedly in order to capture, in order to have control over those areas. Okay, so it was not at all an organic or historical designation, but was born out of deliberate post-colonial efforts in order to control, in order to have control over those areas. Okay, because in 1960s you all know that we lost a border war with China in 1962. There was a movement of Naga independence that time. Also, we had a war with Pakistan in 1965. There was Mizo rebellion. See, while answering your post-independence answers, you need to show the situation first. What was going on? What were the events that time? Then you can justify your points that, okay, this was the government's decision. For that reason, we took this decision. Okay, so always know of the security scenario, always be aware of the events going on during that period of time. So that is how you can learn your post-independence history. Go by the events one by one. Okay, so only naming of events would suffice while writing your post-independence answer. So here the reorganization of northeastern states was mainly driven by security reasons because of these events. Because of the war with China in 1962, because of the Naga independence movement, because of the Mizo rebellion during that time, because of the India-Pakistan war that time. Okay, then Nagaland officially became a state of India in August 1, 1963. Why did we make Nagaland so hurriedly? Because there was a movement going on. And the timing of creating Nagaland as a state was not at all coincidental. We tried to grab that movement. We tried to take opportunity of that Naga rebellion that was going on. So the Indian officials, they strategically aimed to address the Naga rebellion by providing a political solution that involved granting statehood to the Nagaland. So the intent was very clear that we should be integrating the Naga stakeholders into the Indian political system and reduce the support for the insurgency. So here the idea was very simple, to create a sense of ownership and representation of the Naga people within the Indian Union, and thus their grievances would be addressed. For that reason, we provided statehood to the Nagaland in 1963, just after the Indo-China War. Okay, so the situations like the Indo-China War, the Naga insurgency played a very, very important role in making Nagaland a separate state within the Indian Union. Okay, so for your information, the Naga insurgency was led by the leader Fizo, Angami Fizo, who sought for the independent Naga state. So immediately we went for granting statehood. Only for the security reason, only to have control of the situation, only to give representation for the Naga people within the Indian Union so that their grievances would be addressed. Because it was at the periphery of the international border. Right, so these reasons you have to give whenever any answer you have to write for the post-independence era. Similarly, other states were given statehood. Okay, like Manipur and Tripura, which were previously union territories, they were given statehood in the Act of Reorganization Act of 1971. Meghalaya was carved out of Assam. Mizoram was given the status of union territory. Again, Arunachal Pradesh also was given the status of union territory. But later, Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh, which were given the status of union territory, they were granted full statehood in 1987. So you have to remember the names and the sequence of events, and the year, if you remember, is well and good. Okay, so that is how you can answer any question related to the reorganization of northeastern India. Okay, so basically they were driven by security reasons. After the independence, when the Britishers were there, they only thought of their own economic interest. They divided the districts in such a way that they were only reaping the benefits of settled district, and rest of the districts were left like that in order to create the buffer. But after independence, we thought of bringing the security safety net in the region of Assam. And because of many rebellions happening, we wanted to have control over the insurgency there. So that is how we brought statehood to the different states there, right? So this was all about today's discussion, And the short notes of this video discussion would be there in the Telegram group, that is Kalamai's Academy. You can join us using the link provided in the description box. So until then, goodbye, happy learning, take care. Thank you so much.